Blazing Saddles was not just another comedy western, it was a cinematic Molotov cocktail thrown at Hollywood's establishment, a film so controversial it nearly got shelved multiple times. What audiences saw as a hilarious parody was actually a battleground where Mel Brooks fought studio executives, censors, and even his own cast to bring his vision to life. Behind the scenes of this comedy classic, a different kind of war raged, one with casting disasters, racial tensions, censorship battles, and studio executives who tried to kill the project before it ever saw the light of day. These are not just production notes, they are battle scars from the making of a masterpiece that changed comedy forever. Today, we are revealing 20 weird facts about Blazing Saddles that will forever change how you see this comedy classic. And stay tuned to the end for a bonus fact so shocking it remained buried in the Warner Brothers archives for decades. Number 20, the studio fired Richard Pryor and nearly destroyed the film. Blazing Saddles was not just written for Richard Pryor, it was built around his comedic genius. Mel Brooks co-wrote the script with Pryor specifically for him to star as Bart. What audiences did not know was that Warner Brothers executives fired Pryor just weeks before filming, terrified of his reputation for drug use and unpredictability. This was not just a casting change, it was a catastrophic blow that nearly collapsed the entire production. Brooks fought fiercely to keep Pryor, but the studio refused to insure him, effectively killing his involvement. The most shocking part, the studio replaced Pryor with relatively unknown theater actor Cleavon, who had never carried a film before. This was not just a risk, it was a gamble that could have destroyed the film's commercial prospects. Brooks later admitted, "Without Richard, I thought the movie was dead. The studio had taken the heart out of my film." The decision would spark one of the most contentious battles between a director and studio executives in the 1970s Hollywood. Number 19, the film almost received a National Center 17 rating for racial language. Blazing Saddles was not just pushing boundaries, it was shattering them. And the censors were not laughing. When the Motion Picture Association of America reviewed the film, they initially slapped it with an X rating for its extensive use of racial slurs, particularly the N-word, which appears over 15 times. What audiences did not know was that this was not just a rating, it was a potential death sentence that would have killed the film's box office prospects. Mel Brooks erupted in fury, engaging in a brutal battle with the ratings board. He was not just defending his film, he was defending artistic integrity against what he saw as hypocrisy. "They wanted to punish me for showing racism while ignoring it in serious films," Brooks later claimed. The most shocking part, Brooks had to personally appeal to the Motion Picture Association of America board, arguing that the film was satirizing racism, not promoting it. He eventually secured an R rating, but only after cutting several scenes and adding a disclaimer. This was not just a ratings dispute, it was a cultural war over who gets to define what is offensive in America. Number 18, Mel Brooks fought a brutal battle with studio executives over the bean scene. Blazing Saddles' infamous bean scene was not just a moment of comic genius, it was the center of a vicious power struggle between Mel Brooks and Warner Brothers executives. When studio heads first saw the dailies of the cowboys farting around the campfire, they demanded the entire sequence be cut. What audiences did not know was that this was not just a creative disagreement, it was an all-out war that almost ended with Brooks being fired. Studio executives called the scene vulgar, juvenile, and box office poison. Brooks was not just defending a joke, he was defending his entire comedic philosophy. "If I cannot make a fart joke, I cannot make this movie," he reportedly told executives. The battle became so heated that Brooks threatened to walk off the project, taking the script with him. The most shocking part? Brooks secretly filmed multiple versions of the scene, including one without the farting, to fool executives into thinking he was compromising while actually planning to use his original cut. This was not just a fight over a scene, it was a battle for the soul of the film. Number 17, Harvey Korman's method acting caused on-set tensions. Harvey Korman was not just playing the villain Hedy Lamarr, he was becoming him, and it terrified the cast and crew. What audiences did not know was that Korman's intense method approach to playing the corrupt attorney general created a hostile atmosphere on set. He was not just acting, he was staying in character between takes, insulting crew members and intimidating other actors with Lamarr's cruel demeanor. This was not just preparation, it was psychological warfare that made the set a living nightmare. Gene Wilder later admitted, "Harvey became so convincing as a villain that we all started to hate him a little." The most shocking incident occurred when Korman, fully in character as Lamarr slapped a script supervisor for moving too slowly during a crucial scene. Mel Brooks had to intervene, reminding Corman that Lamarr's evil, but Harvey's not. This was not just a performance, it was a method acting nightmare that blurred the line between character and actor, creating real tension that would last long after the cameras stopped rolling. Number 16. The film's final confrontation scene caused a real-world lawsuit. Blazing Saddles was not just breaking the fourth wall, it was breaking laws, and it cost Warner Brothers a fortune. The film's climactic scene, where the fight spills onto the actual Warner Brothers lot and into other films, was not just clever, it was legally complicated. What audiences did not know was that Brooks failed to secure proper permissions for using the studio's lot and referencing other films. This was not just an oversight, it was a legal nightmare that resulted in multiple lawsuits. The most shocking part? When the film premiered, several directors whose movies were referenced in the final scene threatened legal action, claiming Brooks had parodied their work without permission. Warner Brothers had to pay substantial settlements to avoid court battles. This was not just a creative decision, it was a financial risk that nearly bankrupted the film's budget. Brooks later admitted, "I thought breaking the fourth wall was funny. The studio's lawyers thought it was grounds for dismissal." The incident changed how Hollywood handled film parodies forever, establishing new precedents for fair use in comedy. Number 15. The film's racial humor created tensions between black and white cast members. Blazing Saddles was not just satirizing racism, it was exposing it, and the tensions were not just on screen. What audiences did not know was that the film's extensive use of racial slurs and stereotypes created real friction between black and white cast members. Cleavon Little, who played Bart, was not just acting uncomfortable with the racial language, he was genuinely troubled by it. This was not just a performance, it was a reflection of real pain that emerged during filming. The most shocking incident occurred during the scene where Bart is called the N-word by townspeople. Little reportedly broke down in tears after multiple takes, requiring Brooks to halt filming for the day. Gene Wilder later recalled, "The line between satire and reality blurred, and we all felt it." This was not just a movie about race, it was a production that forced Hollywood to confront its own racial tensions. Brooks had to mediate between cast members, explaining that the film was attacking racism, not perpetuating it. The experience would leave a lasting impact on everyone involved, changing how they approached racial humor in their future work. Number 14. The film's campfire scene was almost cut due to on-set accident. Blazing Saddles' iconic campfire scene was not just controversial, it was dangerous, and it almost cost an actor his life. What audiences did not know was that during filming, a controlled fire used for lighting the scene erupted into a larger blaze when unexpected winds swept through the location. Several actors, including Cleavon Little and Gene Wilder, narrowly escaped injury. This was not just a production accident, it was a near disaster that could have ended the film. The most shocking part? Studio executives used the incident as justification to cut the entire bean scene, claiming it was too risky to continue filming. Mel Brooks was not just defending his artistic vision, he was fighting to prove the scene could be completed safely. The production had to hire additional fire safety crews and rebuild part of the set, adding thousands to the budget. This was not just a comedic set piece, it was a battle between art and safety that tested Brooks' determination to see his vision through. The scene that became one of the most memorable moments in comedy history almost never made it to the screen. Number 13. Gene Wilder's alcoholism nearly derailed key scenes. Gene Wilder was not just playing the Waco Kid, he was battling alcoholism throughout production, and it threatened to destroy his performance. What audiences did not know was that Wilder frequently showed up to set intoxicated, sometimes unable to remember his lines or hit his marks. This was not just a personal struggle, it was a production nightmare that required Brooks to develop creative solutions. The most shocking part? During the scene where the Waco Kid demonstrates his shooting skills, Wilder was so drunk that he could not properly handle the prop gun. Brooks had to use a body double for the more complex shots, carefully framing around Wilder's limitations. This was not just a technical challenge, it was a race against time to capture Wilder's genius before his addiction consumed it. Brooks later admitted, "Gene was brilliant, but haunted. We had to film his scenes quickly, before the alcohol took over." The struggle to complete Wilder's performance became one of the production's greatest challenges, resulting in a cinematic achievement that masked the personal turmoil happening just off camera. Number 12. The film's title was almost changed by studio executives. Blazing Saddles was not just the perfect title for the film, it was nearly replaced by something completely different. What audiences did not know was that Warner Brothers executives hated Mel Brooks' title, fearing it would not attract audiences. They pushed for generic alternatives like The Sheriff, Black Bart, or Western Funnies. This was not just a marketing disagreement, it was a fundamental battle over the film's identity. Brooks fought back with ferocity, arguing that Blazing Saddles perfectly captured the film's satirical spirit. The most shocking part, executives went behind Brooks's back and test marketed the film with different titles, hoping to prove their point. When audiences responded negatively to all alternatives, they reluctantly relented. This was not just a title dispute, it was a fight for creative control that revealed the deep disconnect between artists and executives. Brooks later quipped, "They wanted to call it Tex-Ex. I told them that was not a movie title, it was a math problem." The victory for Brooks would set a precedent for directors fighting to maintain their vision against studio interference. Number 11, the film's satire of racism created real-world backlash. Blazing Saddles was not just mocking racism, it was confronting it head-on. And the consequences extended far beyond the theater. What audiences did not know was that several theater chains refused to screen the film, particularly in southern states, claiming it was too controversial for their audiences. This was not just a distribution issue, it was a cultural battle that exposed America's deep racial divisions. The most shocking part, the film received bomb threats at several theaters, with white supremacist groups protesting its portrayal of interracial relationships and its critique of white racism. This was not just a comedy, it was a revolutionary statement that challenged the very foundations of American racial hierarchy. Mel Brooks received death threats for the film, requiring security during promotional appearances. This was not just artistic risk-taking, it was genuine danger that underscored how powerful the film's message truly was. The backlash proved that Brooks was not just making jokes, he was exposing uncomfortable truth that many Americans were not ready to confront. Number 10. The film's production was haunted by the Vietnam War. What audiences did not know was that Mel Brooks wrote Blazing Saddles while America was deeply divided over the Vietnam War, and the conflict influenced every aspect of the production. The film's anti-authoritarian themes and critique of government corruption were not just comedy, they were political commentary on the Nixon administration and the Vietnam quagmire. This was not just a Western parody, it was a satirical assault on American imperialism and institutional racism. The most shocking part? The film's tagline, "Never give a saga an even break," was a direct reference to the Pentagon Papers scandal that had rocked the nation just before filming began. Brooks later admitted, "We were making fun of the Old West, but we were really talking about the present mess in Vietnam." The film's subversive message resonated with a war-weary audience, turning it into a cultural phenomenon that spoke to the anti-establishment sentiment sweeping the nation. This was not just a comedy, it was a revolutionary act of cinematic protest. Number 9. Cleavon little-faced intense pressure as Hollywood's first black comedy star. Cleavon Little was not just playing a black sheriff, he was carrying the weight of representation on his shoulders, and the pressure was immense. What audiences did not know was that Little faced intense scrutiny from both black and white communities who had vastly different expectations for his performance. This was not just an acting job, it was a cultural tightrope walk that required extraordinary skill and sensitivity. The most shocking part, Little received hate mail from black activists who accused him of selling out by participating in a film that used racial slurs, while white executives worried he was not black enough for the role. This was not just typecasting, it was an impossible situation that would have broken a lesser performer. Little later admitted, "I knew I could not please everyone, but I had to be true to what Mel and Richard Pryor had written." The psychological toll of balancing these competing demands would haunt Little throughout his career, making his brilliant performance in Blazing Saddles even more remarkable. This was not just a star-making role, it was a cultural breakthrough that changed how Hollywood viewed black actors in comedy. Number 8. The film's ending was almost completely different. Blazing Saddles' iconic fourth wall breaking ending was not just inspired, it was a last-minute solution to a production crisis. What audiences did not know was that Brooks originally planned a conventional Western finale, with a massive shootout between the townspeople and Hedy Lamarr's forces. This was not just a creative choice, it was a practical necessity due to budget constraints. The most shocking part, when Warner Brothers cut the film's budget by $500,000 midway through production, Brooks could no longer afford the elaborate battle sequence. In a moment of desperation, he conceived the metafictional ending where the characters break through the studio wall and disrupt other films. This was not just a budget compromise, it was a stroke of genius that elevated the film from mere parody to postmodern masterpiece. Brooks later admitted, "Sometimes the best ideas come from having no money." The improvised ending would become one of the most influential moments in comedy history, inspiring countless films to break the fourth wall in creative ways. This was not just a production problem, it was an artistic limitation that sparked a revolution in comedy filmmaking. Number 7. Madeline Kahn's performance as Lily von Stoop was almost cut. Madeline Kahn's unforgettable performance as the Teutonic Titwillow was not just comic genius, it was almost entirely removed from the film. What audiences did not know was that studio executives found Kahn's character too vulgar and unnecessary to the plot, demanding her scenes be cut to shorten the runtime. This was not just an editing decision, it was a fundamental misunderstanding of what made the film special. The most shocking part, when executives screened a rough cut without Kahn's scenes, the test audience scores plummeted, with viewers specifically asking where the funny German lady had gone. This was not just a miscalculation, it was proof that Kahn's performance was essential to the film's success. Brooks fought to restore her scenes, arguing that Lily is the heart of the movie's satire of sexual politics. The battle over Kahn's role became a symbol of the larger struggle between Brooks's artistic vision and the studio's commercial concerns. This was not just a supporting character, it was a tour de force performance that would earn Kahn an Academy Award nomination and cement her status as a comedy legend. Number 6. The film's racial satire was influenced by Brooks' personal experiences. Blazing Saddles was not just a commentary on American racism, it was shaped by Mel Brooks' personal encounters with prejudice. What audiences did not know was that Brooks' soul as a Jewish soldier in World War II faced discrimination and drew on those experiences when crafting the film's satire. This was not just observational humor, it was deeply personal commentary on the absurdity of hatred. The most shocking part, the scene where Bart delivers the stampeding cattle line, was directly inspired by an incident where Brooks witnessed a racist being outsmarted by a black colleague. This was not just comedy writing, it was art, imitating life in the most unexpected ways. Brooks later admitted, "I have been on the receiving end of stupidity my whole life. Blazing Saddles was my way of fighting back with laughter instead of fists." The film's most powerful moments of racial justice were not just clever writing, they were distilled from real experiences of prejudice and resistance. This was not just a comedy, it was Brooks' personal statement against hatred, disguised as a Western parody. The authenticity of his experience gave the film's satire a depth and resonance that continues to resonate today. Number 5. The film's choreographed fight scene was a real-life nightmare. Blazing Saddles' elaborate fight scene was not just carefully choreographed, it was a production disaster that nearly ended in chaos. What audiences did not know was that the scene, where townspeople and Lamarr's men engage in a meticulously staged brawl, went horribly wrong during filming. The stunt performers, instructed to make it look real, took their direction too literally and began actually fighting each other. This was not just method. Acting, it was a real brawl that erupted on set, with actors suffering injuries and tempers flaring. The most shocking part, when Cleavon Little tried to break up the fight, he was accidentally knocked unconscious by a stray punch, halting production for 2 days. This was not just a scene, it was a genuine melee that blurred the line between performance and reality. Brooks later recalled, "I was yelling, 'cut,' but no one could hear me over the real punches." The incident required mediation between the stunt performers and a complete restructuring of how the scene was filmed. This was not just a technical challenge, it was a reminder that sometimes the most convincing performances come from places of real conflict and emotion. Number 4. The film's budget was secretly funneled from another project. Blazing Saddles was not just greenlit, it was financed through Hollywood accounting tricks that masked its true cost. What audiences did not know was that Warner Brothers executives, still skeptical of the film's commercial prospects, secretly diverted funds from another, more conventional Western to cover Blazing Saddles' growing budget. This was not just creative financing, it was deception that could have resulted in executive firings if discovered. The most shocking part, the film they robbed was The Outlaw Josie Wales, which was simultaneously in production at the same studio. This was not just budget reallocation, it was corporate sabotage that pitted two westerns against each other for resources. Brooks later learned that when his film needed additional funds for the elaborate finale, the studio secretly took money allocated for Clint Eastwood's film. This was not just production politics, it was a high stakes gamble that could have destroyed both projects if discovered. The fact that both films became classics is a testament to the resilience of their creators, who somehow managed to create masterpieces despite being pitted against each other by nervous executives. Number 3. The film's Chinese restaurant scene was censored for television. Blazing Saddles was not just pushing boundaries in theaters, it was virtually unshowable on television for decades. What audiences did not know was that the scene where the governor visits the Chinese restaurant, complete with racist caricatures and offensive accents, was so controversial that it was completely cut from most television broadcasts. This was not just editing, it was censorship that fundamentally altered the film's satirical message. The most shocking part, when the film finally aired on network television in the 1980s, the scene was replaced with entirely new footage where the characters visit a Western-style restaurant instead. This was not just a compromise, it was a betrayal of Brooks' artistic vision that watered down the film's critique of racism. The censorship battle over Blazing Saddles became a landmark case in the debate over artistic integrity versus commercial accessibility. Brooks later fumed, "They took out the very scene that was making fun of racism, claiming it was too racist. You cannot make this stuff up." This was not just a scene, it was a cultural battleground that revealed America's continuing struggle with how to talk about race and humor. Number 2, the film's impact on future comedy was revolutionary. Blazing Saddles was not just a successful comedy, it was a revolutionary force that changed how Hollywood approached satire. What audiences did not know was that the film's success opened doors for a new generation of filmmakers who wanted to push boundaries with controversial humor. This was not just entertainment, it was a cultural shift that challenged the very definition of what comedy could address. The most shocking part? The film directly influenced the creation of Saturday Night Live, with Lorne Michaels citing Brooks' fearless approach to taboo subjects as inspiration for the show's boundary-pushing sketches. This was not just a movie, it was a catalyst for a comedy revolution that would dominate American humor for decades. Brooks' willingness to tackle racism, politics, and sexuality in a mainstream film proved that audiences were hungry for more sophisticated satire. The film's legacy can be traced in everything from The Simpsons to South Park to Dave Chappelle's work. This was not just a comedy, it was a cultural milestone that expanded the possibilities of what humor could accomplish in addressing society's most pressing issues. Number 1. The film's original script was much more controversial. Blazing Saddles was not just pushing boundaries, it was originally written to shatter them completely. What audiences did not know was that Mel Brooks and Richard Pryor's original script was significantly more provocative, with scenes and jokes that were deemed too outrageous even for 1974 audiences. This was not just cutting for time, it was censoring for content that would have made the final film seem tame by comparison. The most shocking part, the original script included an entire subplot about Bart's relationship with a Native American woman, featuring humor about interracial relationships that was considered too advanced for mainstream audiences. There was also a scene where Bart directly addresses the camera about the nature of racism, breaking character for a political monologue that Brooks eventually cut as too preachy. This was not just a script, it was a revolutionary document that challenged every convention of American comedy. Brooks later admitted, "We had to pull back on some stuff, not because we were scared, but because we wanted people to actually see the movie." The fact that the film remained so controversial, even in its toned down form, is a testament to how radical the original vision truly was. Bonus fact, the film's soundtrack was recorded in secret due to union disputes. Blazing Saddles' iconic soundtrack was not just memorable, it was recorded under circumstances that could have shut down the entire production. What audiences did not know was that when it came time to record the musical numbers, Mel Brooks discovered that the musicians' union was on strike, making it impossible to hire professional players legally. This was not just a production delay, it was a potential disaster that could have prevented the film from being completed. The most shocking part, Brooks secretly hired non-union musicians and recorded the entire soundtrack in a makeshift studio after midnight, with lookouts posted to watch for union representatives. This was not just a workaround, it was a legal activity that could have resulted in fines and even criminal charges for Brooks and the producers. The most ironic twist, the film's most famous musical number, The French Mistake, was literally recorded during the French mistake of Brooks defying the union. This was not just a soundtrack, it was a rebellious act of artistic defiance that perfectly matched the film's anti-authoritarian spirit. The fact that the Union never discovered the clandestine recordings remains one of Hollywood's most closely guarded secrets. Blazing Saddles stands today not just as a comedy classic, but as a monument to artistic courage in the face of overwhelming opposition. What we see on screen, a hilarious parody of westerns that tackles racism with fearless satire, masks the battlefield of egos, budgets, and ideologies that rage behind the camera. From casting disasters to censorship battles, from studio interference to real-world controversy, this film survived challenges that would have destroyed lesser productions. The legacy of Blazing Saddles extends far beyond its box office success or critical acclaim. It changed how Hollywood thought about comedy, proving that audiences were ready for intelligent satire that addressed serious issues through humor. Its most powerful contribution may be how it opened doors for more diverse voices in comedy and demonstrated that laughter could be a weapon against prejudice and injustice. The next time you watch Blazing Saddles, remember the real battle that was fought to bring this vision to the screen. The film did not just survive the Hollywood war, it emerged victorious, creating a legacy that continues to influence comedians and filmmakers nearly 5 decades later.